Buenas tardes. How is everybody doing today, this Sunday afternoon? Uh, I I think this should be a fairly short live stream today. We are going to be talking about some of the most common mistakes new expats are making when they move abroad, or yeah, I guess that's how we'll describe it. So, for those of you in the audience that are contemplating a move abroad, hopefully we can spare you these mistakes. You don't make them, and you can go abroad and stay abroad. If you're here watching the live stream, please say hello in the chat. Uh, this made me laugh. Let's see how many of these I might be making. I'm confident you. Hopefully, you're not making any of these or not too many. Hey, is it Shonda or is it Chanda? Eugenia, because in Spanish I would say Eugenia. Catherine, Hustle Health, Then Wealth. I like that. I like that. Good afternoon, y'all. Before we get into our topic of the day, in case somebody is new here, or if you're watching the replay and this is your first time on the channel, let me say welcome and let me introduce myself. I am Adelia Borchade, although most people on the internet know me as Picky Girl Travels the World. I help Black women master their money and gain financial independence so that they have the freedom to travel the world, move abroad, or do whatever the hell it is they want to do. If that sounds like your kind of thing, be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. That way you'll find out when I go live, when I post a new video. And yes, y'all, I know there hasn't been a new video posted, but I got stuff coming this week. All right, the H-Town ladies are in the chat. Good afternoon, y'all. Okay, I think I have 9 or 10 of the mistakes that I see. I am in a lot of online spaces for people who are moving abroad, people who live abroad, people who aspire to live abroad. And so these are some of the things I see there, as well as with some of the clients I work with who have struggled to stay abroad. You know, they made some of these mistakes. These are not in any particular order. Because I don't necessarily know how I would rank them. So these are just in the order that they popped into my brain. So number 1, getting bad intel, never talking to people who actually live in the destination they are considering before they move there. What I see a lot is in an expat group or a move abroad group, somebody will post, hey, has anybody been to X location? And then people will respond, yes, I visited, or I stopped there for a couple of days. Y'all, visiting a place is different than living there. So if your intel, your information is solely coming from people who maybe you're considering Paris, and all of the people who are giving you feedback, they've been in France at some point in time, but they haven't specifically lived in Paris. The quality of that intel is not sufficient enough to ensure that you know what to expect when you hit the ground. I see this a lot in Mexico. People, and I say people, this is primarily folks in the US, seem to think Mexico is Cancun and Playa del Carmen, maybe Cabo. And they kind of assume that experiences there are going to be similar to what experiences are like in the whole country. Think about the US, because Mexico is roughly the size of the US. It's slightly smaller, but it's roughly the size of the US. If you were considering moving to the United States and somebody from Wyoming was telling you about their experience, but you're moving to New York City, that's not going to work. So I think the best way to avoid getting shitty intel is to make sure that you talk to people. And again, how the quality of the information you get from folks in these online spaces, that's going to vary. But you do your own research, and then you can ask some very pointed questions and look specifically for people who have lived in the city that you're considering. And if you can get down to the neighborhood, that would even be better. Okay. So that's the mistake I see most often, is people don't have really good information. They've only talked to people primarily who visited, but not people who have really lived there, spent like an extended period of time and had to go about their daily life in that place. Okay. I'm just looking at the chat. Hey, y'all. Hey. I see a lot of Texas folks in the chat. So y'all won't get mad at me for saying y'all. Okay. Another mistake that I see, and this ranges. I have on my list paying ATM fees, but really we're going to expand that one to include just like moving money mistakes. So like, yeah, people are moving abroad and they've not given any thought to how they are going to access their money that's in the US. And so they don't have a bank that rebates ATM fees, that doesn't charge foreign transaction fees and currency conversion fees. And so every time they hit the ATM, they're being hit on the side of the country that they're in, plus they're being clobbered with fees on the other side. I would also include in this one people who are carrying around wads of foreign currency. So like here in Mexico, people are coming with lots of US dollars and then physically going to a currency conversion place to convert that money to pesos. Ooh, no, don't do that. Because you run the chance, one, that you can get counterfeit money. Two, you run the chance you get robbed because once somebody figures out you're carrying around that kind of cash. And then three, you're probably not getting the best rate. About a month ago, I did an experiment where because I use a couple of online services like Zoom, which I don't love because they're owned by PayPal, and I'm not a fan of PayPal, and Remitly, to move money from my US bank account to my Mexican bank account, because sometimes I don't feel like walking to the ATM. It's much easier just to have the money move electronically. And then I can pay for things through a transfer. That's very common, to pay for things with a transferencia here, where you get the other person or the company's banking information, and then you from your banking app can just pay for whatever. And so I did an experiment where I looked at what was the rate that like Zoom and Remitly were going to give me. And then I went to the ATM and I used my Fidelity card to pull out money. And Fidelity beat them hands down. So, and this confirmed what I had been experiencing previously, that I get a much better conversion rate when I go to the ATM because I have a money management account, or is it money management? I think that's what it's called, cash management account at Fidelity. They rebate the ATM fees because the ATM by my house, the closest one to me, charges $7 for the transaction. I do feel bad when I see that and know that Fidelity is going to pay it, but I don't feel too bad about it. I see Roxanne had a question about ATMs. What bank ATMs would you recommend? I read that some ATMs in Mexico sometimes dispense fake pesos. And this was the same when I lived in the US. I don't go to like ATMs that aren't like attached to a bank. So I wouldn't like go in a gas station and use an ATM there because too much going on. And I need there to be cameras in case it eats my card. I can be like, yeah, check the camera this day, blah, blah, blah. If I am in Mexico withdrawing cash, I like Inbursa, although there are not a lot of them. Inbursa, Inbursa. They have the cheapest ATM fees. I think they only charge 15 pesos, which is like 75 cents. BBVA, because that is who I bank with in Mexico, and Citibanamex. I like them. And Banorte. So I try to use those if I have a choice. I've mentioned this before. I avoid Santander and Scotiabank because I had a really bad experience in both of them. So I don't deal with them. Staying with the whole moving money mistake, getting money out of the ATMs mistake. I'm sure maybe y'all have heard this, but if not, let me be the one to tell you. I don't know that they do this at ATMs in other countries, but here in Mexico, the banks, as a way to try and make money, will, as you're getting your money out of the ATM, they will offer you a conversion. So you've put in, this is how many pesos I want. A screen will come up and say, would you like to take this number of dollars out of your account? And it will show you a conversion fee. Don't accept that. Say no to the conversion because they're not going to give you a favorable conversion because they're trying to make money off of you. So that would be something else. But I think that's more specific to Mexico. I don't know. I've never seen that screen on an ATM in other countries. So, so far, move abroad mistakes we've talked about is getting bad intel, never talking to people who have actually lived in the place that you're considering, paying fees at ATM, and really carrying around lots of your home currency to physically convert that money. It's much smarter, safer, cheaper to withdraw money from the ATM as you need it versus having wads of USD or what have you. Okay, so number 3 mistake. Oh, we're already at number 3. Like I told y'all, this is probably going to be a really quick one. But these things were on my spirit because I cringe every time I see somebody make a post where they have done one of these things. Okay, so number 3. Ditching your US mailing address. A lot of us who leave the US, myself included, leave with the intention of never, ever going back. And therefore, people are like, well, I don't need a US mailing address. I just use my address in my new country. Don't do that. Maintain a US address. Your life is going to be easier. This became super obvious with the pandemic and the stimulus payments that the government sent out, that the IRS sent out. A lot of people who were living overseas who no longer had U.S. mailing addresses, they couldn't get their checks. Okay, so that's one reason. Another is when you're dealing with banks, when you may find a need to open a new bank account, and then you don't have an address. If you have a close friend, a family member, because I virtually get no mail. I get a couple of pieces a year. I'm sorry, y'all hear all that noise? That is I think that was an ambulance. I live on a main street, plus there is a fire station and a police station across the street. So it's never quiet here. But having that US mailing address will come in handy for lots of things. So it's like getting rid of it will make your life much more difficult than it needs to be. So you need to keep it. So if you've got a family member that will let you use their address, that's fine. If not, You could do a like a mail forwarding service. I did that when I first left the United States. Um, I'm trying to think of what I paid. It wasn't a whole lot. It was less than $100 a year. I know that. And it was not a PO box. The problem with using a PO box is that there are some situations where you may be filling out paperwork and they're like, they won't accept a PO box. That's one. And then two, like if you have a PO box, who's going to go check it? If you do like a mail forwarding place or a virtual mailbox place, that's part of what you're paying for. You're paying for the address, but you're also paying for somebody to check it, to scan whatever you get in the mail, send it to you so that you can tell them what you want to do with it. Okay. Also, for my business, my LLC is based in the US. So having that address to use for that has proved to be handy. Okay. The address thing is going to be an issue. We're selling our house. I could use my business account since it will still be there, or maybe my son since he bought the house from us. Like I said, eventually, the longer you're gone, the less mail you're going to get. So it's not going to be anything, you know, like work-wise that whoever's address you're using, it's not going to be a big burden on them. But if you ever find yourself back stateside, or you're trying to conduct some kind of business and you don't have an address, it really gets to be a pain. Okay, so that's number 3. And I'll just say this also on the mailing front. You'll know I did a video called 10 money moves to make before you move abroad. And in that video, I talk about, you know, the tax implications for where you are domiciled in the US. You might want to coordinate with getting a virtual address in the state that you're trying to domicile in. That might be something to think about. Okay. I've talked about this one before, but people are still making this mistake. So I'm going to talk about it again. Booking housing in your new country, sight unseen. Now, I'm not talking about you are contemplating a move to Portugal. You haven't really been there, and booking yourself an Airbnb, a hotel, a hostel stay for a couple of weeks or a month. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like signing a lease, 6-month lease, a year lease on a place that you have not physically seen with your own eyes. I think that the Chinese, they take this real estate, excuse me. I think the Chinese take the enhancing of real estate photography. I think they take it to a level that I don't know that anybody matches, because everybody I talked to in China was like, do not book a place until you have seen it, because what you see in those pictures and what you get in reality, light years apart. But so that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the short term. I just landed and I'm trying to get my bearings. Like, yes, you could book a hotel sight unseen. You could book an Airbnb for a week or two. And in case it is not what you expect it to be, you're not out that much. But people who are entering long-term leases, they're sending money to people that they don't really know. And you know, the pictures can be misleading. You don't really know what you're getting into. And then you also need to feel the neighborhood, because the place can be gorgeous. I'm thinking of a particular neighborhood here in Mexico City. When I moved back last year, I gave myself a week to find an apartment, and I really wanted to find something fully furnished that all I had to do was show up with the dog in my suitcases. And there was a place. It was obviously a former Airbnb that this guy was trying to turn into a rental, a long-term rental. It was beautiful. The problem was the neighborhood it was in. And that it's like one of the sketchiest neighborhoods here in Mexico City. And for, you know, had I booked it only looking at the pictures, yes, when I got to the apartment, I would not have been disappointed because everything looked inside the apartment like it should have. But the minute I stood on the street outside the apartment, nah. Okay. So that is why I am stressing this to you again. Do not book housing, long-term housing that you have not physically been there to walk the neighborhood, to stand on the street, to get a feel for it, to see if that's what you're comfortable with. Okay. All right. Okay. So I forgot. I lost count. Is that 3 or 4? I don't know. Um, oh my gosh. You booked a place, never saw it, and they had a toilet bowl in the middle of the living room. What country was this in? I'm curious because that sounded like some Chinese stuff on the real. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Um, I am always suspicious of this. She says, I know there was an apartment I was looking at, which is the next apartment they own, needs a bit of reno. Pictures were great, but there were no pictures of the bathroom. I am always leery of a place that does not show pictures of the bathroom. Bathrooms tend to be one of my sticking points. Like I can put up with some things, but the bathroom needs to be good. So yeah, I definitely would be suspicious of that. Oh, it was in Thailand. Yeah. Yeah. So definitely that. Okay. All right. So I don't know what number we are on the list because in my notes, I didn't number these. But the next one is, well, there's two things on my list, and these are somewhat related to each other. One, a huge mistake I see new expats making is they have American expectations. And I think this is partially a cultural thing. Like there is a certain flow to life in the United States. There's a certain flow to how you do business. There's a certain way you interact with people. And coming to another country and expecting that to work the same way it does in the United States. No, you've heard both me and Rashida talk about like time here in Mexico does not work like it did in the US. So if they say they're coming to deliver something today, maybe they will come today. What time are they coming? Who knows? And to then respond like, oh, they said they would be here at noon. They really got here at 5. And then to chew them out and be like, upset about it. To me, like that's having American expectations. So thinking that things are going to run as smoothly or run in the way that they do in the US, no. What having those American expectations, what it's going to do is one, it's going to piss you off a lot. You'll be pissed off a whole lot. It's going to, I think, ruin the experience that you're trying to create for yourself by living in another country. And you are probably going to come off as the obnoxious American to the people that you have to interact with. So I'm trying to think other times. Okay, I saw a post in a multicultural, we'll say that, in a multicultural Facebook group for here in Mexico City, where somebody was complaining about the noise in their building. They were like, what can I do? Like, this is what they asked. They asked, how could they soundproof their apartment? Because repeatedly people in their building were having parties to 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning. They've gone to security. Security hasn't done anything. They call the police. The police haven't done anything. And they're like, I don't know what I could do. And there were several people in the comments that were like, just move. Because y'all, that's a fact of life here in Mexico City. In Mexico, people party late. The party starts late and it goes until late. And where I guess the idea that, in your apartment building, on your street, it should be quiet. Maybe that's an American thing. I don't know. But having that expectation here, all it does is piss people off and make them miserable in their time here. Um, so that's what I mean about having American expectations. You wouldn't, like it's like having children. You wouldn't judge all of your children by the same standard because every kid is different. You shouldn't judge the way of life in your new place based off of what it was like in your old country, because you need to judge this country by how they do things here. That's just how it is. I'm looking over here in y'all comments. I'm telling you, because that was my thought when I read it. Before I even got to the comments, I was like, dude, you need to move. Like, and y'all, I always joke about Mexico City being so loud. There are relatively quiet places in the city. But like, if you're a light sleeper, this is a hard place to live if you're a light sleeper. But if you're a light sleeper, that noise is like, you can't have noise when you're working virtually or whatever. You need to make a specific effort to live in a neighborhood that's going to support that, because expecting the majority of the people here to conform to what you want, you're setting yourself up. Okay, I'm just seeing where y'all are here. Okay. Recommendations for planning productive neighborhood tours on a move. What are key things you should look for? How much time should you spend? Those are excellent questions, Alicia. Was it last week? I put up the poll on my YouTube channel and asked y'all, I gave you some video topics, and overwhelmingly people wanted to know about underrated neighborhoods in the city. So my task this week is to try and make that video. So maybe I could incorporate some of your questions into that as well, because those are really good questions. And yes, there is the Blacksit Global podcast episode, I think, that's airing right now. That's on that topic. Okay. All right. Okay, so it's on the YouTube channel. All right. So kind of to go with that. So, there are a lot of times when something like, I don't stress out about Mexico being Mexico. Same thing when I lived in Honduras, same thing when I lived in Kuwait. China got under my skin a little bit. I'm not even gonna lie, but I understood. I even started to say, like, China doesn't care. Like, I may feel this kind of way. Like, one of my biggest issues was trying to order things, because you did everything on your cell phone, but none of the apps had a language feature. None of the apps would allow me to easily copy the Mandarin so that I could translate it. There was no translate feature. And so that got to me, because I was like, how the hell am I supposed to order anything to eat? I don't know what any of this is. And I realized China doesn't care about you, girl. China doesn't care that they hurt your feelings. There are more than 1 billion Chinese. There might be 1 million non-Chinese here. China don't care. And so I had to get over me and my American expectations, because China, disavowed me of that real quick. Like, girl, you're this important compared to everybody else. But in that same line of thinking, and this is something Stephanie Perry brought up, that if you're trying to like transplant the life you had in the US into your new country, you're going to set yourself up for failure. Because all of these mistakes, or the most of these mistakes, these are things that could create an environment that ends up keeping you from staying, abroad. If you're spending too much money on fees and stuff like that, you're getting bent out of shape, because it's noisy or people are up late or, whatever. Same thing. If you're trying to make a carbon copy of the life you had in the US in your new country, well, one, what's the point of even going? Two, that's going to be a hard thing to do. And I think that's going to result in you just getting frustrated and you being unhappy because things aren't exactly what you had before. So it's like holding on to your American expectations and trying to transport your life into the new country. You're setting yourself up. You're setting yourself up to be unhappy. And why would you do that? You know, like you're moving abroad to live the life that you always wanted. Why bring this baggage with you? Just my opinion. Okay. Let's see, what's the next one on this list? Oh, committing crimes. Didn't think I needed to say this, but I've seen several posts in the last couple of days where people from the United States are asking for advice basically to skirt the laws in their host country. They're asking advice for how to do illegal things. Y'all don't do that. Don't do that. Okay. Understand the terms of your visa and follow those terms. Even in a place like Mexico, which can be a little, like there are plenty of laws, but how many of those laws are actually enforced and all of that? Not so many, but often that will get people into a sense of like, oh, I can do anything I want in Mexico and I can get away with whatever. Don't do that. Because do you want to be the person they make an example of? What was it? When was old girl who got deported from Bali? When was that? Because again, she posted some stuff on Twitter. She was violating the terms of the visa she was there on. And there was this whole conversation of like, oh, is she getting all of this heat because she's Black? Because there are plenty of non-Black people who do the same thing. Don't matter, y'all. You can always be the person they decide to make an example of. And that's what happened to old girl. They made an example out of her. And she was deported and drugged for filth all over the internet. So yeah, don't commit crimes in your host country. Don't violate the terms of your visa. Know what they are. So like, for instance, I have, you know what, I'm gonna pause right here. Because I was just thinking this, because if you are a Black person in the United States, you already know we can't do the same thing. And although we are a lot freer outside in the rest of the world, anti-Blackness is a thing, y'all. And if they're looking for somebody to make an example of, odds are it's going to be us. But what I was saying, like with my residency visa here in Mexico, because a lot of times I get questions about like, oh, are you a citizen? I'm not a Mexican citizen because, well, at this point, I don't qualify yet. But really, citizenship it would get me a passport. It would get me the right to vote. Pretty much, I can do everything else that a Mexican can, except I cannot participate in protests. That is illegal for a tourist, for a non-Mexican citizen to do. Okay. I know that. So if you've ever been to Mexico City, you know that there is always a protest of some sort. There's usually multiple protests going on in this city. So if I chose to participate in one of those, I would be in violation of my visa. I could be thrown in jail. I could be deported, what have you, possibly even barred from the country. So, understand the terms of what is allowable under your visa. Don't be asking people for advice on how to skirt the laws in your host country. I see a lot of questions about avoiding taxes and that sort of thing. Like I said, don't commit crimes. Okay. Um, what else do I have on my list here? Okay. Staying in the expat bubble. That is another mistake I see a lot of people make, where, because I understand you're moving to another country, you may not know the language there, you might not really be clued in on the culture. And so being around people who speak your language, being around people whose culture is somewhat similar to yours can be very comforting. It can make for a very soft landing. But don't spend your entire time abroad there, because you're shortchanging yourself. And like, you're not getting the full rich experience that you obviously desired because you chose to move to another country. So there's that. But also, because well, one, look at it from a financial standpoint. If you're staying in the expat bubble, you're paying more for your lifestyle than a local. I guarantee you that. One of the biggest examples I can point to here in Mexico City is 1-bedroom apartments. I see it all the time, especially with like the digital nomad crowd. They will post that they're looking for a place, preferably 1-bedroom, blah, blah, blah. Y'all, a 1-bedroom apartment can cost twice as much as my 2-bedroom apartment, my 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. Sometimes it's not even a whole 1-bedroom. It's a loft. So there's like your sofa and your bed are right next to each other. Why? Because the only people moving into 1-bedroom apartments are foreigners. Mexicans don't generally move out on their own and want a 1-bedroom apartment, because again, in the US, the cheapest would be the 1-bedroom. Here, that is not the case. And so, that's one way that if you're and those 1-bedroom apartments tend to be in the neighborhoods that have lots of foreigners in them. So you're staying in that bubble, you start to think like, this is how much I should be paying for things. I said, the experience is not quite the same. And especially if one of your goals moving to another country is to learn the language, living around a bunch of foreigners, socializing only with a bunch of foreigners, how you gonna learn the language like that? I've mentioned several times that here in Mexico City, purposely, both apartments I've had, I chose neighborhoods outside of the expat bubble, primarily because of cost, primarily because of that, but also I wanted to have to walk into a store or walk into a restaurant and have to carry on my business in Spanish. And I know that's a very scary proposition. I know it is, because, even now, my heart still beats a little faster, and I have to stop and think about like, okay, so how do I say this thing that I want to say? Like, what's today? Saturday? No, today is Sunday. Friday night, I had dinner reservations. And it started to pour down rain. It started to hail. And so I was like, and the temperature dropped. And so I was like, I got to cancel my reservation. So I had to call to cancel. And talking on the phone in Spanish is maybe my least favorite thing to do in the world. But I got through it. And, they thanked me for calling to cancel, because I'm sure plenty of people didn't. But yeah, if the whole point of moving to another country is to get this in-depth immersion into the culture, you can't do that if the only people you kick it with are foreigners. And then there's the other piece of it. Like, we don't want to come to somebody else's country, y'all, and be colonizers, because that's big colonizer energy, that I'm going to come to your country, but I'm not going to integrate with the people there. And we don't want to do that. Okay. Let's see. What else? I would agree. It has helped with my Spanish. It has helped with like understanding how life works here and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm definitely for that. I'm looking at my list to see did I okay, so there's one more thing on my list. Okay, about apartments. I've seen numerous videos, online apartment searches, and live Q&As that refrigerators are not included in apartments typically. Why? Hell, because a kitchen isn't necessarily guaranteed. And that blows my mind. When you look at a lot of apartment listings, it'll say cocina integrada, like integrated kitchen. And what they're telling you is, yes, there are cabinets and countertops. There is a kitchen here, because there was one place that I before I knew that, when I first moved here 4 years ago, that no, there was no kitchen. There was a sink, but it was like a freestanding sink, but there was nothing in the kitchen, nothing at all. No cabinets, no shelving, no refrigerator, no stove. I don't know why, other than maybe that's just the way it has always been. That particular apartment was a little older. Um, the apartment I have now, I think, is about 6 years old. The place I used to live before, so that's 4 years ago, at that time, it was like 5 years old. It was a condo. So there was an integrated kitchen. There were like cabinets and all of that. And my previous apartment, which was furnished, he included a refrigerator. I didn't have to bring anything. In this place, I had to buy a refrigerator. So I don't know, but that's not the standard here. Also not the standard is a cooktop with an oven. You might get burners of some sort, but you might not get an oven. Again, it depends on price point. It depends on like the age of the building, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's one of those interesting little Mexican quirks. Okay, I'm just going through, seeing if there are comments. Okay, all right, I'll scroll back through here. Okay, so because I'm not gonna hold y'all, the last thing that is on my list that I see as a major mistake that people make when they move abroad is they do not have an exit strategy. They do not have a plan B. And I did an episode of the podcast once where it talked about fear, because I don't buy into this idea that you have to overcome your fear of doing something before you can do it. Do it scared. Like we're definitely about that on this channel, but have a plan. So like in case everything goes to shit, what are you going to do? So you move to another country, and yes, you might have had to struggle to get together the money for the airline ticket, and you're having to live with roommates or whatever. But if things go south, do you have enough to get you a flight to get out of there? What is your plan B? Not having one, being unprepared when stuff goes down. When I look in the various expat groups and people talk about having to return to the US, or, oh, I went abroad this time, but I've had to go back. This tends to be the major reason they have to go back, is something happened and they did not have a plan B. They did not have an exit strategy. They did not have, y'all know I talk about, oh shit money. They didn't have that. And therefore, they couldn't keep their knees bent. They couldn't roll with whatever went on. And so as you are planning your move, wherever you're planning your move to, what is your plan B? If you get there and you don't like it, like the weather is not what you were expecting, maybe they've got bugs you weren't counting on, there are people who move here that the elevation bothers them, the pollution bothers them, whatever. Okay, where would you go next? Do you have the money to get you there? Okay, having that plan B. Okay. I see over here in the comments, y'all are talking about apartments. So I'm wondering, the very first video I did on this channel was how to find an apartment in Mexico City. And so I'm wondering, do we need to have a chat and talk about apartments and real estate and that sort of thing? Because I see y'all are having quite the conversation over here. I always wondered why one bedrooms were more expensive. Yeah. And this is why here in Mexico City, I've always had a 2-bedroom apartment, because what people want to charge for one room, for $100, $200 more, I could have my own apartment. Yeah, I would just get the extra bedroom. And I mean, I guess if I didn't mind other people in my space, I could rent it on Airbnb or something like that, but I'd have to be pretty desperate to do that. Which visa? Okay, this is an interesting question. When I was in Tulum, I booked a lot of services from Airbnb, things to do. Most were expat. Which visas allow you to work in Mexico? Solo business owner as an expat. Okay, now, were those people working legally? I don't know. But if you want to do that sort of thing legally, you need to be at least a temporary resident, and you need to have permiso de trabajo, permission to work. When you apply for a visa here in Mexico, you can apply for a work visa, but it usually has to be sponsored. What some people will do is they will qualify for a temporary visa because they have the finances. And then after, you can change that and add on permission to work. If you are a permanent resident, it by default comes with permission to work. So yeah, if you are doing Airbnb in Mexico, deriving income from Mexico, you should have residency, and you should have permission to work. But like I said, a lot of people will, if their income is sourced in Mexico, they'll get the temporary residency first and then apply to change the status to add permission to work to their visa. I love to see this. I'm making my plans now, including plan B, C, and D, saving an additional 20% on top. I love to see it because you can't be too prepared. And like I say all the time, money gives you options. Is $5,000 enough for a plan B? That is going to depend on where you are. But I think there are very few places where that would not be enough, is what I think. Okay, so y'all want apartment talk? All right, so maybe that's what we'll do on the next live, which will not be next weekend, because next weekend is Exodus Summit, which I'm sure many of you, Exodus Homecoming, excuse me, which I'm sure many of you will be attending. So no, there will not be a live on this channel then. Let's see what else y'all are asking. Can you talk about how Mexico is handling the pandemic? Did you feel safer with the public health measures than in the US? Yes, I felt safer here with the public health measures. I just got back from the US a week ago, and I tried my best to stay out of the public because people in the US don't wear masks. And here in Mexico City, I can say that the vast majority of people are wearing masks. You get, sanitizing gel when you go into a place. People are not tripping about having to wear a mask. That's not a big thing here. Now, how is Mexico? How is the government handling the pandemic? Ooh, that I don't have as many positive things to say. I've read a lot of things because I don't see it, and I also don't have what do you call it? Like, I don't watch regular broadcast television, so I don't catch the news that way. So I do follow on Twitter, like the boss of the city government, the jefe de gobierno, the government of the city. I've also follow a couple of newspapers in Spanish because I need to read in Spanish. But like the way in the US, I might have the news on just playing in the background. I don't really do that here. So there's a lot that I miss. But some of the things I've been reading online, the government's response was not great. But how are people managing? People are doing what they need to do so they can go out and work. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Let's see. I'm going back up in the chat now because I think there were a couple of folks that I miss. Spanish classes, blah, blah, blah. Okay, more apartment talk. I will tell you, because I see several comments, y'all were talking about taking language and, versus being someplace where you have to use it. Let me tell you, sometimes when I speak in Spanish, it's ugly as hell. But if I am in a situation and I need to say what I need to communicate some way, I find the words somehow. That when I took an intensive Spanish class at UNAM at the university here at their Center for Educating Foreigners. Actually, 4 years ago today on September 19th, that's where I was when we did the earthquake simulation before the earthquake that day. And the biggest thing that helped me with my Spanish was that in class, even though my teacher did speak English, she would not allow us to speak English. There were a bunch of students who were from China, from South Korea, and she was like, they can't speak English, so why would I speak English to y'all? And so we would get partnered up, and me and the Korean guy would have to come up with something, and I've got to find the words with the little bit of Spanish I knew at the time to figure out, what we needed to say. So for me, being forced to use it, even if it's ugly, and I've learned to just apologize before I speak to let them know, hey, my Spanish is not great, but I'm sorry. Okay, I think, did I get back up? Yeah, we don't want to go to jail. Okay, I feel like, I think there's one I'm missing, but this is not giving me, it's not making it easy for me to scroll up to see. Okay, so I'll go down and see what the most recent ones. Like nobody, this was something I was worried about when I was in the US before last week, was like, I'm always going to wear my mask. But if somebody is going to try and harass me about wearing a mask, like, are we going to have to come to blows over that? And so, no, here it's like, put on your mask, get on the bus, get on the metro, go do what you got to do, live your life. Yeah, nobody's acting a fool like that. Now, that's not to say that we don't have people who are attending large events and not observing safe distances, and that, people are people, but you are not going to be made to feel bad because you're trying to protect yourself. Okay, Exodus Homecoming. Is it your experience that Mexicans are forgiving when you make an effort to speak Spanish? Yes. I have not had, and I've been to other parts of the country as well. I've not run into anybody who gave me grief or who seemed to be like put out about me and my horrible toddler Spanish, which is the opposite of my experience in China, which is why I only know 4 words of Mandarin. And I knew 3 before I lived there for a year and a half. I don't know if it's Chinese culture or if it's because the language is tonal, but if you don't say things the exact way, there is no, oh, is this what you mean? Or trying to help. They just stood there and looked at you, mispronounce things. They weren't trying to be helpful or understanding at all. And I was like, why am I trying? I don't even want to be here speaking this language. Why am I trying? So that's why I don't speak any Mandarin to speak of. Okay. I'm just checking your questions, seeing if I missed anything. Okay. I think I am caught up, and we are just about at an hour, y'all. So we'll wrap this up. Are they mandating vaccines in Mexico? The president stated from the very beginning that he would not mandate the vaccine, but it would be available and free to the people who wanted it. But to get vaccinated here, I've heard stories of people on tourist visas getting vaccinated, but on the whole, you need to be a resident because you have to have a corp, which is kind of like a social security number. They use that to register you in the system so that you can get vaccinated. Okay. Well, y'all know I did not love China, but there are many layers to my disdain for China. But in a couple of weeks after Exodus Summit, I am going to do a live with someone that I met online, and she is there now. And we're going to talk about like my experience versus her experience. So if you're still holding out hope of maybe going to China and you're hoping it's not as horrible as I have made it sound, you'll definitely want to be on the lookout for that. Last call for questions, y'all. And yes, I have made note that y'all want apartment chat. And yes, you still want that video on underrated neighborhoods in Mexico City. So I have, that is duly noted. Okay. All right. Thank y'all for coming now and joining me. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I hope to see many of you next weekend at Exodus Homecoming. I am not speaking. I spoke last year at Exodus Summit, but I'll be around. Y'all know me. All right. I don't see any more questions, so I will talk to you later. Oh, if you are new, because I know some of y'all are always here, but if you're new and you need like a move abroad checklist, there is a link to that in the description. There's some other links in the description that I don't remember what they are, but there are things I think you might need if you are planning a move abroad. There's also, if you want to book time with me, I do one-on-one calls, primarily about personal finance or moving abroad or some combination of that. If that sounds like something you might be interested in, bit.ly/askadalia, all lowercase, but there is also a link in the description. And so I will be seeing y'all around here on the internet. There will be some video uploads this week, but again, there won't be another live for at least 2 weeks. Okay, bye y'all.